Hey everyone, today we're going to learn how to create a artisan command package. So let's create a artisan command that counts the number of rows in a given table in a database. So let's get started. One thing to remember is that I am creating this whole thing from scratch. So if you're already familiar with how to create a Laravel project and set up your migrations, you can just skip ahead. All right, so let's create our database. So first, we'll call our database .db and choose our collation to be UTF-8 and apply. All right, so now we have our database. Let's go into our terminal and navigate and create our directory and navigate into it. So now let's run our composer command to create our project. Laravel, and so now composer is going to run. All right, let's navigate into it. Sublime text. The first thing is we will configure our database. So we set up our database name and username and password. All right, so now let's add Jeffrey waste generator to make our development a little bit easier. And go back to terminal and run composer update. All right, so now we have the package installed. Let's go into app.php and add its service provider. Okay, so now we can fire up Artisan and see if the generator is there. Okay, so we see that the generator is installed correctly. So since we're already configuring our app, let's configure our workbench.php. So here, just input your name and your email. So this is used for when we're creating our workbench package. All right, so now let's create our migration file. Let's create a posts table. Let's also create the seeder for that post. All right, so now let's navigate to our Sublime text migration table. Let's create a titles field and a content field. All right, let's go to our seeder. Let's first uncomment the truncate and the insert, and I just created some simple dummy data. And now we're ready to run our migration. And then we can seed that table. So now we have our Laravel package set up for development. Let's create our workbench. So first we run artisan workbench, and the vendor name, which I just use my GitHub username, and then the package name. So if we run that, you see that Laravel has created a new directory called workbench. And let's take a look at what's inside. All right, so let's see. So here you can see that Workbench has created this directory that mirrored the vendor and package name. And inside that, we have a similar path under source for namespacing. So since we're creating commands, let's create a commands folder that will house all of our artisan commands. So now let's run command make to make our artisan command class. So let's call it database manager count, and we set the path to where we just created the commands directory. And for namespacing, it's essentially the path underneath the source directory. Okay, so run that, and here we see that it created this file. All right, let's see what Laravel created for us. So here, in line 1, we see that Laravel put in the correct namespacing, or the namespacing that we specified. And if you scroll down, we see that there is the name and the description of our command. So let's go ahead and change that. So for name, let's do db colon and count. But it could be anything, right? And for description, let's just say that it counts the rows of a given table. All right, let's scroll down, and fire is where the command actually executes. So let's go ahead and change this get arguments. So here we want the user to input the table name so that we know which table to actually count. So now let's go down to get options. Since we don't have any options right now, let's comment that out. All right, so now let's create our fire method. But before we do that, we're going to be using two Laravel facades, DB and the schema. So let's include that. All right, so now let's first get the table name from our argument. So to do that, you run this argument and the argument name that we specified. Now we have to see if this table actually exists. So if it doesn't exist, then we will return an error. All right, so now if the table does exist, we will get that table. And we'll just count the number of rows. And we'll just return a simple info string telling the user how many rows there are. And that's it. Now we have to register our commands. So let's go into our service provider, and in the register, let's register our command in the IOC container. So we do this app share, and in the closure, we will return a new instance of our command. Return new DB manager count. So now we registered this db.count in the IOC container. We have to tell Laravel that this is actually an artisan command. So to do that, we call this commands, and we just give the name that's in the IOC container. So now that we have our service provider, let's add it to our app.php. DB manager and our DB manager service provider. All right, so now if we run artisan list, we should be able to see the command that we just created. So yep, db:count. So now if we run our artisan command help, we see that it gives the correct usage and arguments that we have specified. So now let's actually test it out. So art db count posts, we see that it correctly counted the 5 rows that we created in the Cedar file. All right, let's now go into our composer.json file. And in the package description, we just put the description artisan command package for easy database management. All right, so now let's create a Git repo. So here we navigate to the Workbench package. So here we see that there's the composer.json and the source folder, everything that Laravel created for us. All right, so let's create our repo. So let's do git, let's do a git add, and then make our first initial commit. So that's it. From this point on, you can just push it up to GitHub, make it public, and then submit it to packages. Then you can just include it in all of your future projects. All right, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial, Please follow me on Twitter. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below. Thanks.